In this video, you will find out what heuristics and biases are and how they are of importance for structured expert judgment. Imagine you want to try your luck this week and buy one lottery ticket. At the counter, you can choose to buy one ticket that is already filled in, or you can fill the ticket yourself. What would you choose? Research has shown that it is more likely that you choose to fill in the ticket yourself. If you have done so, it means that you have relied on a rule of thumb rather than have performed a mental calculation in order to determine the probability of winning the lottery ticket with the two tickets. I refer here to subjective probability or degree of belief. Such rules of thumb are called heuristics. It is sometimes wrong to rely on heuristics, you might wonder now. We definitely use heuristics on daily basis. The problem, however, is that they might lead to predictable errors. By error, I mean here either a violation of the axioms of probability or an estimate that is not in accordance with the subject's belief. When heuristics lead to these kinds of errors, we speak of biases. The word bias has multiple meanings. Bias is used here as a misperception of probabilities. We will see how this is important to be aware of these biases when designing techniques for eliciting expert opinion. There are numerous biases researched and documented by the field of psychology, including anchoring, availability, confirmation bias, representativeness, conservatism, ostrich effect, overconfidence, control. You might recognize some of these from their name. We will only discuss these three as they are relevant for the expert judgment setting. Availability is a term coined by psychologists Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman in 1973. They suggested that the heuristic follows the principle that if you can think of it, it must be important. Things that can be recalled more easily are believed to be far more common and more accurate reflections of the real world. Typically, the frequency with which a given event occurs is usually estimated by the ease with which instances can be recalled. Reports and high media coverage on airplane accidents, for example, often lead people to believe that such events are more likely to occur than they truly are. This, in turn, fuels plane crash fears, which might make people think that traveling by air is more risky than traveling by car, for example. Also, when asked to estimate the likelihood of certain disaster, one might be influenced by the availability bias. For example, seeing a number of movies about nuclear disasters might influence someone's degree of belief in the occurrence of a nuclear disaster. Similarly, the high media coverage of tsunamis or earthquakes will also make these disasters look more likely. More likely than global warming, for example. But that touches upon other biases and errors in human judgment. Now, say someone wants to sell their old car for about $6,500. How much should she or he advertise the car for? Most people would advertise the car with a higher selling price, say of $7,500, in the idea that negotiation will follow. This happens because the first number of $7,500 will anchor the whole negotiation. Moreover, the negotiation would also lead to a lower price, which will make the buyer content. So we see the anchoring heuristics at work. Kahneman and Tversky also coined this term of anchoring in a paper entitled Judgment Under Uncertainty, Heuristics and Biases. The anchoring bias describes the human tendency to heavily rely on the first piece of available information, the anchor. Once the anchor is set, uncertainty estimates are provided around the anchoring value, regardless the legitimacy of the actual anchor number. This occurs also when estimating probabilities. If we set ourselves in the expert elicitation framework, the anchoring bias might arise in the following way. Recall that the experts are asked to estimate the 5% and 95% quantiles of a continuous distribution, along with a 50% quantile. What happens in practice is that often experts anchor too close to the 50% quantile, which leads to an underestimation of the tails. These assessments lead to distributions which are too concentrated. This effect is closely tied to another bias, that is, overconfidence. Simply put, overconfidence is the tendency to think that one knows more than one knows in fact. Kahneman called overconfidence the most significant of the cognitive biases. Arguably, the best-known cases of overconfidence played a major role are sinking of the Titanic, the disaster of Chernobyl, or the loss of Space Shuttle Challenger. All these cases basically denote a poor judgment of estimating the failure probabilities. To end with a more positive note, a study in 1981 by Ola Svensson revealed that 93% of the interviewed people believed they were better drivers than the median, which of course is statistically impossible. Do you think the classical model addresses the overconfidence bias? Take your thoughts to the discussion forum. Finally, we look at the control bias, with which we started this video. The control bias describes the belief that if some aspect of an event is controllable, such as filling in the lottery ticket, for example, then its probability is influenced. Well, it is very nice that we learned about these heuristics and biases. But are they of importance for structured expert judgment? And why should we care? The answer is yes, they are extremely important. That is because people, including experts, frequently use heuristics in providing subjective probabilities. We have seen that these heuristics might lead to potentially biased assessments. It is therefore important to be aware of those biases and to try to fix them or develop expert elicitation methods that minimize these biases. Having said this, do you think that the classical model is developed such that it minimizes the biases? If so, can you name one in particular? You can express your opinion in the discussion forum. If you are interested to read more about heuristics and biases, here are 3 great books as references. Bear in mind that in the books of Kahneman, most of the experiments did not involve experts. In the book of Cook, you can read about some of experiments performed with experts. Thank you for your attention.